On my birthday, my parents didn't bring out a gift. They brought out witnesses, 50 of them, arranged like a jury. The dining room in our Westfield home was packed with familiar and unfamiliar faces, aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew, all seated, all watching. My father, Anthony, didn't say, "Happy birthday." He slid a leather folder toward me instead, the kind lawyers use. Inside was a document, $120,000, itemized down to the dollar, for the cost of raising me. My mother Rita sat perfectly still at the other end of the table, her face composed, her silence louder than any accusation. Then my sister Vera stood up, reached across the table, and picked up my car keys. "The title was transferred Tuesday," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I looked at the folder, then at the 50 faces staring back at me. Some looked confused. Some looked away. But they were all there, and that was the point. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a legal performance. If I argued, if I broke down, if I signed anything, I'd be admitting the debt was mine. I closed the folder, stood up, and walked out. No tears. No explanations. Just silence. My name is Clara. I'm 28, a financial consultant in Westfield, New Jersey, and for most of my life, I was the daughter who made problems disappear. My father, Anthony, believed control was the highest form of love. Every decision, every dollar, every conversation, he orchestrated all of it with the precision of a man who'd never been told no. My mother, Rita, perfected the art of enabling through silence. She never argued, never intervened, just smoothed her dress and looked away while Anthony reshaped reality to suit himself. My younger sister, Vera, learned early that charm was currency. She smiled at the right moments, said the right things, and somehow always ended up with what she wanted. I learned something different. I learned that being useful meant being valued. When their accounts didn't balance, I balanced them. When tax documents needed organizing, I organized them. When they needed someone to co-sign something, witness something, fix something, I showed up. Just a formality, my father would say, sliding papers across the kitchen table. "You understand numbers better than we do." I signed. I always signed. I thought competence would earn me a place at their table. I thought solving their problems meant I belonged. I built a career, paid my own rent, drove my own car, or so I believed. Independence felt real. It felt like freedom. But they still had all the paperwork. The invitation came on cream-colored cardstock, my mother's handwriting in careful script. Birthday celebration at the house. Saturday, 6 p.m. The whole family will be there. My birthday had never warranted cream-colored cardstock before. Usually, it was a phone call, maybe dinner with the four of us if schedules aligned. This felt different. Elaborate. Intentional. I should have known then. I arrived at 6:15, still in my work clothes, carrying a bottle of wine I'd picked up on the way. The driveway was packed with cars I recognized, Uncle Paul's sedan, Aunt Helen's SUV, vehicles belonging to cousins I hadn't seen in years. Through the front windows, I could see bodies moving, the house crowded in a way it never was. 50 people, maybe more, arranged in neat rows in the dining room and spilling into the living room. Formal. Silent. No music, no laughter, no chaos of a real celebration. Anthony sat at the head of the table like a judge at a bench. Rita beside him, spine straight, hands folded. Vera stood near the sideboard, her smile tight and rehearsed. No cake. No presents. No warmth. Just faces. All watching. Waiting. The air felt wrong. Staged, like a courtroom drama before the verdict. I was the subject, and I didn't yet know the charge. My father didn't waste time. No speech, no preamble. He reached beside his chair and produced a leather folder, the expensive kind, the kind that makes documents look official even when they're not. He slid it across the table toward me, with the care of someone serving a subpoena. "Open it," he said. I did. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed and formatted like an invoice. Line items ran down the page in neat columns. Housing, food, education, medical expenses, clothing, utilities. Each year itemized, each cost calculated. At the bottom, a total. $120,000. This is what we invested in you, Anthony said, his voice calm, measured, like he was explaining a business decision to a client. We expect repayment or complete separation. No contact until this debt is resolved. The room stayed silent. 50 relatives watching, some shifting uncomfortably, some staring at their hands. My mother Rita didn't move, didn't flinch. Her silence wasn't passive, it was deliberate, calculated, damning. She'd agreed to this. Planned it. My mind moved fast, pulling apart what I was seeing. This wasn't just cruelty. This was a legal trap. If I argued, if I acknowledged the debt as real, I'd be establishing liability. They wanted me to react, to agree, to sign something. Before I could speak, Vera stood. She crossed to where I'd set my purse and jacket, reached in, and pulled out my car keys. The metal clinked softly as she held them up. The title was transferred Tuesday, she said, not quite looking at me. Her voice wavered just slightly. Dad took care of it. Tuesday. 3 days ago. They'd been planning this, consolidating assets, moving pieces into place before I'd even received the invitation. I looked at the 50 faces surrounding me. Some looked confused. Others looked away. But they were all here. All witnesses. That's what this was, a performance with legal weight. Public disownment with documentation. I closed the folder slowly. Stood. Picked up my purse. My father leaned forward. Clara, we need an answer. You'll get one, I said quietly. I walked out. No tears. No defense. No scene that could be used against me later. Just the folder in my hand, and 50 witnesses who'd just seen something they couldn't unsee. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how I turned this silence into real power and the consequences my parents didn't expect, consider subscribing now to follow what happens next. I spent that night at my kitchen table, the folder open under the overhead light. The document looked official, professional formatting, itemized columns, even a signature line at the bottom. But it was theater. Legally meaningless. A scare tactic designed to establish acknowledgement of debt that didn't exist. What worried me wasn't what was in the folder. It was what wasn't. At 8 a.m., I walked into David Banks's law office. He'd handled my mortgage paperwork 2 years ago, methodical, thorough, someone who understood that documents were weapons. I need you to see something, I said, sliding the folder across his desk. And I need to know what my parents have done. David read it once. Then again. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. Don't sign anything, he said. Don't acknowledge anything. Not in writing, not verbally, not to anyone. We started pulling records. Credit reports first. Then bank statements, account histories, anything tied to my name or social security number. The first discovery came within 2 hours. A credit card I'd never opened. Then another. Loans I'd never signed for. Accounts I'd never accessed. 6 years of systematic fraud, hiding in databases I'd never thought to check. The dinner wasn't punishment. It was their exit strategy. Disown me publicly, make me the scapegoat, and disappear before anyone noticed what they'd done. For 3 days, David and I built the case in silence. Spreadsheets, bank statements, credit reports laid out across his conference table like evidence at a crime scene. Each document told part of the story. Together, they told all of it. The pattern emerged slowly, then all at once. Every fraudulent account had been opened during a period when I was helping with family paperwork. That loan from 2019, I remembered signing something that day, my father explaining it was a refinance, nothing that concerned me. The credit card from 2021, opened the same week I'd helped them organize tax documents. Co-sign loans that quietly became primary loans in my name. Money moved through accounts I didn't know existed, hiding income sources Anthony and Rita didn't want traced back to themselves. 6 years. Systematic. Calculated. The 50 witnesses at the dinner weren't just cruelty. They were legal cover, proof that Anthony and Rita had publicly severed ties, establishing plausible deniability before anyone discovered what they'd done. My phone wouldn't stop. Anthony's calls came first, his voicemails clipped and commanding. We need to talk about this situation. Call me back. Then Rita's single text, cold and brief. Disappointed in your behavior. Then Vera, her messages growing more frequent, more confused. Day 1. Dad says you're being unreasonable. Day 2. Can we just talk about this? Day 3. Clara, please call me. I don't understand what's happening. I didn't respond. Let them believe the silence meant defeat. Let Anthony think I was too scared to fight back. Let Rita assume I'd disappeared into shame. But I noticed something in Vera's texts. The confidence from the dinner was gone. Her messages weren't accusatory. They were frightened. She wasn't asking me to comply. She was asking me to explain. I looked at David across the table. Vera doesn't know, I said quietly. He glanced at the texts on my phone. No, he agreed. She doesn't. A pawn, not an architect. That changed things. Not much, but enough. On day 4, David looked up from his laptop. We have everything we need, he said. Question is, what do you want to do with it? David laid out 2 folders on the conference table. One thin, one thick. Option 1, he said, tapping the thin folder. We negotiate. Settle quietly. You'll take some financial damage, maybe 20,000-30,000 to clean up the accounts and close the fraudulent ones. Your credit takes a hit for a year or 2. But it's contained. Private. Your family relationships stay intact, whatever that's worth. He moved his hand to the thick folder. Option 2. We file identity fraud reports with every relevant agency. Credit bureaus, banks, law enforcement. We trigger formal investigations into every account, every loan, every transaction. We expose all of it. I stared at the thick folder. What happens to them if I file? David didn't hesitate. Audits. Investigations. Potential criminal charges depending on what the authorities find. And it all becomes public. Court records, filings, proceedings. Everyone will know. I thought about the 50 witnesses. The folder. The car keys. The 6 years of signatures I'd given them. Trusting. My phone buzzed. Anthony again. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. His tone had shifted. Not commanding anymore, pressuring. Almost pleading beneath the control. Clara, you need to think carefully about what you're doing. Family is permanent. These things can be worked out, but not if you make rash decisions. Call me back. Today. Then Rita's text arrived. Are you really going to destroy us over a misunderstanding? A misunderstanding. 6 years of fraud, reduced to a misunderstanding. My phone rang. Vera this time. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Clara? Her voice was shaking. Please, can we just talk? They told me you'd understand. That you'd help like you always do. I closed my eyes. Vera, what did they tell you to do? At the dinner. What exactly did they say? Silence. Then, quietly, they gave me the keys to take. Dad said. He said you'd agreed to transfer the car. That it was part of some financial planning thing you were doing together. He said to make sure everyone saw, so there wouldn't be confusion later. And you believed him? He's our father. Her voice cracked. Why wouldn't I? I hung up, looked at David. My hands were steady. File everything, I said. I'm done protecting them. He nodded once, pulled the thick folder toward him, and opened his laptop. The quiet sound of keys clicking felt like justice starting to move. David filed the reports electronically at 10 a.m. Identity theft claims with all 3 credit bureaus. Fraud reports with every bank that held an account in my name. Formal complaints with law enforcement. By noon, accounts started flagging. Transfers froze mid-process. The systems moved faster than I'd expected, algorithms detecting patterns, triggering automatic holds. At 1:15, Vera called. Clara, something's wrong with the car. Insurance says the policy is invalid. The registration, they're saying there's an ownership dispute. What's happening? I didn't answer. Let her figure it out. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. Anthony. I picked up this time. What have you done? His voice was tight, controlled rage barely contained. I reported identity theft. I said, my tone calm, precise. Because that's what it is. You're destroying this family. You used my identity for 6 years, I replied. You opened accounts I never authorized. You moved money through my name to hide your income. Then you tried to make me legally responsible for your debts in front of 50 people. I documented it. That's all. Clara, listen to me. I'm done listening. We can fix this, he said, and now I heard it, desperation creeping into his voice. Just retract the reports. We'll work something out. As a family. 50 people watched you disown me, I said. You made sure of that. You wanted witnesses. Now you have them. Witnesses to fraud, witnesses to extortion, witnesses to everything you thought you could get away with. Clara. I hung up. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed even. I set the phone face down on David's desk and looked at him. How long until the audit? I asked. Already reopened, he said, turning his laptop screen toward me. Flagged automatically when the fraud reports hit the system. Justice didn't need my anger. It just needed documentation. The audits moved like dominoes falling. Each investigation triggered another. Accounts Anthony and Rita thought were buried surfaced in database searches. Income sources they'd hidden for years appeared in cross-reference tax documents. The $120,000 bill they'd presented at the dinner was flagged by investigators as an attempted extortion, legally unenforceable, potentially criminal. 5 days after I filed the reports, David's office phone rang. His assistant transferred the call to the conference room where I was reviewing documents. Someone named Vera for you, she said. Says it's urgent. I picked up. Clara? Vera's voice was small, uncertain. Can we talk? I have documents. I think you need to see them. We met at a coffee shop 2 blocks from David's office. Neutral territory. Vera arrived with a manila envelope clutched against her chest, her eyes red-rimmed like she hadn't slept. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were printed text messages. Screenshots from her phone. All from Anthony. Take the keys and say the title was transferred. She'll understand. Make sure everyone sees. This needs to be public. Don't engage if she argues. Just follow the script. Vera's hands shook as I read them. I thought, her voice broke. I thought I was helping with a family boundary. That you'd been difficult, that this was an intervention. I didn't know about the fraud. I didn't know any of it until the car insurance called, and then everything started unraveling, and She stopped, tears spilling over. I believe you, I said quietly. She looked up, surprised. But you need to give these to the investigators, I continued. They'll want to see them. Vera nodded, wiping her face. I already did. This morning. I gave them everything, texts, emails, the instructions Dad gave me. I told them I didn't understand what I was participating in. Within days, the whispers started in Westfield. Not gossip, concern. The Fletcher family facing legal trouble. Relatives Anthony and Rita had called for support weren't answering. The 50 witnesses from the dinner were talking, comparing notes, asking each other. Did you know what they were doing? Anthony's frantic voicemails piled up on phones across town. Rita's carefully crafted texts went unanswered. The community they'd built their reputation on was asking questions they couldn't control. And this time there were 50 witnesses who'd seen exactly how it started. 2 weeks after the audits began, David called me into his office. He had a stack of documents waiting, final reports, closure notices, official correspondence stamped with government seals. It's done, he said simply. The fraudulent accounts were closed. Every credit card, every loan, every hidden line of credit opened in my name gone. My credit report was being corrected, the fraudulent marks removed one by one. It would take time, but the process was in motion, irreversible. Anthony and Rita faced financial penalties for the fraud. The amounts were substantial, enough to hurt, enough to matter. More than that, there were potential criminal charges pending, depending on what the prosecutors decided. The investigators had found years of irregularities, patterns of financial manipulation that went beyond just using my identity. 3 days later, I drove past the house in Westfield. The for sale sign stood in the front yard, staked into the perfect lawn my mother had always maintained so carefully. The symbol of their flawless family, the stage for 50 witnesses, now just another property listing. My phone buzzed. A text from Vera. I'm testifying if they need me to. Whatever the investigators need. I'm so sorry, Clara. For all of it. I read it twice, then typed back. Thank you. And I forgive you. Because I did. Vera had been a tool, not an architect. She'd been manipulated the same way I had, just differently. She was facing her own reckoning now, understanding that the parents she'd trusted had used her, that the loyalty she'd shown had been weaponized against her own sister. I thought about the 50 witnesses. At the dinner, they'd been arranged like a jury, meant to watch my humiliation, to legitimize my parents' cruelty through their presence. But they'd become something else entirely. They were proof that what happened wasn't a private family matter, but a calculated, public act. Proof that Anthony and Rita had orchestrated everything deliberately. Proof that my response wasn't emotional revenge, but documented necessity. Those 50 people had watched me walk out in silence. Now they knew why. David handed me the final document, a letter from the Fraud Investigation Unit closing my case. Victim status confirmed. Identity restored. No liability for any of the debts created in my name. How do you feel? He asked. I looked at the letter, at the official language that turned 6 years of manipulation into legal findings, that transformed my silence into evidence. Free, I said. And I meant it. I wasn't the daughter who fixed their problems anymore. I wasn't the one who signed without reading, who trusted without questioning, who believed that competence would earn me love. I was just Clara. And that was enough. I walked out of David's office into the afternoon sun. No folder in my hand. No debt following me. No system requiring my silence. The paperwork was filed. The case was closed. The truth was documented. Justice didn't need to scream. It just needed to be thorough. And it was. 3 months later, I sat in my apartment on a Tuesday evening. The kind of quiet evening I used to dread. No calls to return, no crises to manage, no problems that needed my immediate attention. Now the quiet felt different. Clean. Mine. My desk was clear. No leather folder. No itemized bills. No documents requiring my signature. My phone sat face up, silent. No demanding voicemails from Anthony. No calculated texts from Rita. No frantic messages asking me to fix something, smooth something over, make something disappear. The freedom looked like paperwork, closure letters, corrected credit reports, legal findings stamped and filed. But it felt like something else entirely. It felt like breathing without weight on my chest. I wasn't disowned. That's what I finally understood. They'd meant it as erasure, as punishment, as a legal maneuver to escape accountability. But what they'd actually done was release me from a system that had never valued me, only what I could provide. Vera and I texted occasionally now. Careful conversations, rebuilding something that might eventually look like trust. She was working a job she'd once thought beneath her, living in a small apartment, learning what independence actually cost. We were both learning, in different ways, what it meant to exist outside the system our parents had built. The 50 witnesses scattered back to their lives, but the dinner remained. A story told at family gatherings, whispered in grocery store aisles. Not as gossip, but as caution. A reminder that appearances can be architecture, that silence can hide fraud, that the people who demand your loyalty most loudly might be the ones exploiting it most completely. I thought about what my father had taught me, intentionally or not. That everything has a price. That love is transactional. That family is a ledger that must eventually balance. He was right about one thing. Everything has a price. He just never calculated his own. If you're listening to this and someone used your identity, your silence, or your love as a weapon, you're not alone. The manipulation feels insurmountable when you're inside it. The loyalty feels like duty. The compliance feels like love. But documentation is power. Legal systems exist for exactly this reason. Share your story in the comments. Also tell me where you're listening from. Your words matter. Your experience matters. And remember, walking away with evidence is always stronger than staying to argue. Always. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want to hear more gripping tales, then subscribe for more.